excited. Yeah, when you reached out, we're like, you want to come back? I was like, yeah.
That's awesome, man. We're so happy to have you back.
You're on a very short list now.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's an honor.
That's right, guys.
I appreciate it too.
That is the voice that you are hearing. You heard him talk about it. He's a 3-time returning GOAT District guest, and come on, guys. I know he's on, but one of our top favorite guys to have on the show. All the goodness he brings, and just an all around nice guy. Welcome back, Josh Larky.
Thank you for having me. I am ready to. You got me again. I'm ready to talk some football. I think we have it's gonna be a really good show. I'm excited.
Yeah.
A few of the questions that were in here, I was like, you know what? I haven't been asked this yet, and I'm ready.
Nice.
Nice. Yes. Hopefully we're as ready as you. I had one of those days at work where I was just bouncing from one thing to another, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, time to get on.
I feel like the most stressful thing in my day was just thinking about the Vikings running back use. And
way to go, Theo. That's the kind of day you want.
I had my office Christmas party last night, and I was sitting there putting in waiver wire bids during the Christmas party. It's like a psycho. And now all day long, it was awesome. Vikings running back watch. But I feel like Dalvin's gonna go out there and he's gonna get opportunities. I think it's gonna be a great game. We have so much exposure, to this game. Usually don't like that on Thursday night, but it's Deante Johnson, Najee Harris, Dalvin Cook. It's gonna be exciting.
Yeah, it's two of the most consolidated offenses, which I think. Yeah, so I feel like at first glance you think, oh, this is the Vikings, the Steelers. There's kind of that joke going around Twitter that it's the two teams who couldn't beat the Lions. But I think from a fantasy football perspective, it's two of the absolute most condensed offenses, because the Steelers, there's really just 3 guys to focus on. And now with the Vikings, there's basically 3 guys to focus on. I don't know if we want to throw Osborne in there, but probably just Cook, Jefferson, Conklin. But I have to say, I made some showdown DFS lineups with Dalvin Cook in the captain slot. I have a couple with Madison in the captain slot because I don't trust this shoulder to hold up for a full game, 100 out of 100 simulation. So with the top heavy payouts of DFS, we've got a couple Madison captain lineups. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, that's really the way to do it. I mean, as long as you're throwing a few lineups in.
No, Dan might freeze. He's been having alien issues. So let me ask, if you're setting lineups, it's dynasty or redraft, you have both Madison and Cook. Do you have a thought of throwing Madison in a flex spot with Cook, or are you just playing Cook as if he's playing the full role and that's how you're playing it?
I would just play Cook. I think it's kind of a probabilities thing where I think it's most likely that Dalvin Cook is the workhorse. He gets the touches and he comes out of this game healthy enough. But with DFS, where I feel like the incentive structure is all about chasing that first, like that 1%, that outcome, then I start to think more about, okay, there's a chance Dalvin Cook gets re-injured. But I think in terms of if I'm doing player props, any type of redraft dynasty where it's more of a 50-50 decision, I just have Dalvin Cook in the lineup and Madison's just on the bench. So maybe we'll see if that comes to hurt me, but I don't think I would, unless you're just the heavy favorite and you have to bank points. I don't think I'm starting both. Just Dalvin.
Yeah, I think starting both is always a risky move to start an entire backfield. I think it's kind of a poor strategy. I'm starting Dalvin Cook. I'm rocking with him. I'm not going to bench him anywhere. I think that they want him to be the man. It's an important game for Minnesota. It's at home. It's Thursday night, and he came back from injury. I don't think he's coming back from injury after the way that Madison played last week to be used in like a limited role. I think they're going to try to use him in his regular role. If there's a setback, you'll see more Madison. But I think if you have Dalvin Cook, it's week 14, throw him out there.
There's a tweet that I'm trying to find that, like every show, I can never find the tweet I'm looking for. But somebody tweeted
the Dwayne McFarland.
Yes,
the Dwayne McFarland one. Yeah.
Thank you.
So
basically
Dwayne,
back in 19. Perfect.
The last time Dalvin Cook had a what was it? He had the very similar injury and he wore the protective gear. he had 2 touchdown rushes. So Dwayne was spot on with that one.
Yeah, like 5
Dwayne's
targets, 90 yards.
Yeah, so he ate. He was a running back 1 that week, and let's got to start your studs. It's week 14. Don't overthink it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, if you got Dalvin, I don't know how you leave him on your bench tonight.
So right off the bat, we're off the rails with regards to the show sheet, which is pretty much what we thought would happen. But I'll try to bring it back a bit, just because Josh is one of our fellow #AlwaysBeStacking guys. He basically explained to everyone why we were stacking. He had the brain capacity and the patience to look into, do the research. So guys, go check out his work. Amazing work on that. I was going to just tell him about one of my teams that I drafted in the NFFC right now. It's 13th overall in the big best ball tournament. And I thought you'd like this roster. It's got Tom Brady, Mike Evans, and Gronkowski. And then I've got Jacobs and Sony Michel, Cooper Kupp, Mike Williams, Jerry Jeudy, and then a couple of decent defenses. But just, the stacking is just killing this year, and I'm loving it.
Yeah, those Buccaneer stacks are just hitting so hard. It's unbelievable. It's really the Buccaneer stacks, and then it's still the Ram stacks, but at least preseason, I feel like we were including Woods in that. He's not healthy. So I guess with the Buccaneers, like Antonio Brown's not healthy, which has hurt me in a few situations. But in general, like these super pass heavy offenses that before the season started, where we knew that this was a pass heavy offense, the stacks are killing it. And I think one more that has really come around recently, I mean, it didn't work out against New England, but before that, the last few weeks now, I think through the fantasy playoffs, that Allen Diggs stack looks like it's going to hit really, really hard. And that it started off a little rocky, but that's going to be a fun one to monitor. But yeah, the Brady stacks with Godwin, Evans, Gronk, Fournette, they are really just.
Dan, did Josh just name our big money league roster? Is that Josh Allen and Brady with some stacks all in there with Diggs and Gronk?
I mean, that might have been the case. Yes. Yeah, he definitely did. Most definitely did.
I like it.
Yep. Dan and I will always be stacking in the main event this week with a nice little Godwin, Evans, Brady stack. That'll be a little fun this week, Dan.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And, one of our listeners, Joey Brown, he's sitting at number 2 overall in the Silver Bullet with Brady, Mike Evans, and Fournette. So
that sounds good too.
Yeah. He's basically he's 8 points off of the lead, and he's just crushing it every week. Meanwhile, I have a similar stack in my Silver Bullet, but I just don't have as good of players going around him. So I'm sitting in like 42nd place overall. But I mean, hopefully it's a smaller tournament, so hopefully I can make it. I'm sitting in 4th place in my own league. I got to make 3rd place to make it, but I'm right there. So it's all going to come down to this last week. If I can make it into the big money dance, and my team has been performing better of late as well. So hopefully me and Joey are both going to be there and we can battle it out.
It's that time of year, right, guys? It's the money weeks. We've been talking about it, and they're big weeks. So what do we do in the district? We bring you the big guests. That's why Josh is here today. Smash the like, guys. Smash the subscribe. Show your support for the show. Show your support for what we're doing. We're going to get into goodness. Before we get into the goodness, though, Josh, anything up and coming that people should know about? Anything new? We know you're out there in Player Profiler. You've got amazing best ball. Just, give the people a good idea of what you have coming out in the near future.
So I actually have a big research article dropping tomorrow. It's a huge player prop strategy guide. I feel like so I'm in California. There's no quote unquote legal sports betting. So I'm doing the underdog fantasy where you do like a pick 2, pick 3, pick 4, pick 5, and you can't just bet individual player lines. You have to do some type of pick multiple players, multiple teams. There's a lot of platforms circulating with that. They're really popular. There's Prize Picks, Monkey Knife Fight. And I think a lot of people don't quite realize how much the odds are stacked against you in those types of formats. And that if you just go in there thinking that you know the players or that you have projections that you trust, you are most likely going to lose money. In fact, last year I deposited $100 into one of those types of apps, and I just lost my $100 over like a 4-week period. It was
And
quick.
is that because how good they are at setting those lines with those players?
So it has to do with the payout structure compared to what the actual odds are. So I'll give you a quick little taste of one way that they can really get you. So well, one of the big things is a pick 4. If you pick all 4 correct, you're going to 10x your money. And I think a lot of people go, oh my goodness, I should have to get 4 right. I 10x my money. And if these are 50-50 lines and you're just kind of picking who you like, the odds that you're going to get 4 50-50 lines correct, or basically like calling 4 coin flips in a row correct, is 1 in 16.
I see.
Yet the payout isn't 16x. It's only 10x. And that basically every single payout that they have is significantly worse than like the actual odds and what you would hope to get if everything was 50-50. So I kind of break down how to correlate your pick'ems. That way, suddenly, the historical chance that your correlated lines are hitting is actually better than the payout structure. So I provide several examples in my article of very specifically, here is what you should be setting. Look at all the lines for the week and choose these lines with these types of players. And I lay it out based on the last 10 years of data and what's hit at a higher rate historically than the actual payout. Because if you have a pick 4 and the payout is 10x, you need to find a pick 4 that's hitting more often than 10% of the time, or else you're going to be losing money. And I don't think most people are thinking about it like that. They're like, oh, I saw projections and I took this because of this, without realizing like, oh, if you took a 52-48 line and you're stoked because you thought it was better than 50-50, I hate to break it to you, that's not good enough. And I kind of lay out what is good enough and how to feel confident making those picks. So that'll be coming out tomorrow on playerprofiler.com, totally free for everyone to read. So I'm expecting to lose some ROI as at least Underdog probably shifts a little bit, because I recommend some pretty intense strategies that I think everyone else will start to catch on to a little bit more. But I really haven't even put that much time weekly into my Underdog picks at this point. I've made a lot of money this year after losing my $100 deposit last year. And it's because I have a very set strategy that I've kind of identified. So that will be just out in the open for everyone starting tomorrow.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Guys, go check it out. Follow Josh. It's J Larky Tweets out there in the Twitter machine. Shout out to Kyle. Got out of curling early to come watch the show. And then Anna just loving the good vibes with Josh Larky back in the GOAT District. Sorry.
Can I just say what a absolutely Canadian tweet that was from Kyle?
Doesn't get more Canadian than curling, boys.
However, that said, when we get off this podcast, I'm going to go watch the Vikings game at the local curling center. So
no way.
Yeah.
Minnesota is the adopted state of Canada. That's for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. We're southern northwestern Ontario or something like that.
Hockey and curling. I love it.
That's right.
I love it. All right. We're boring Josh here. He's down there in Cali in the sunshine. We're all, under like a bucket of snow.
Oh no, it rained today. Times are tough.
We feel
60
bad.
degrees.
Must be awful, eh?
Gosh,
must be
horrible for you.
You might have to put a windbreaker on, Josh.
Yeah, I threw the sweatshirt on earlier when I walked the dog. It's really, really difficult.
The dust off
that looks like a long sleeve shirt, right?
No,
okay. All right. My bad.
All right, guys, let's get into it. We only have 60 with Josh. We could go all night with him, but there's a football game. We know people want to get to their lineups. Lessons learned, guys. We've been kind of looking at lessons learned rest of the season. We've been trying to hit different states of the season. But if we're looking at lessons learned, Josh, you obviously came in with a lot of strategy, a lot of research that you brought to Fantasyland. Why don't you tell us about maybe your biggest surprise when it comes to players this year?
So I'm going to avoid Cordell Patterson just because I don't know if that's something where we can really be like, oh, this is exactly what we learned. It's obvious. He's a big surprise. But I think one where we can take a little bit away from it is Jonathan Taylor. And I mean, I ended up slightly above the field on Jonathan Taylor when all was said and done, but I think that was largely a product of how much his ADP fell as draft season was going on. We had the Wentz injury, we had that Quentin Nelson injury, but I think one thing that we can all take away from it was that why wasn't Jonathan Taylor a top 5 pick? It's because of Nyheim Hines. Nyheim Hines primarily was kind of the focus of all of our arguments, and that this is an elite pass catching back, which is true. Nyheim Hines has been really, really good as a pass catching back. But I think that one thing that we can learn from this is that Jonathan Taylor had always been an efficient receiver. I mean, his best college target share season was a higher college target share than Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Jonathan Taylor was a competent receiving back. He was efficient as a rookie. And I think that we always discuss how kind of like that rookie to year 2 jump for running backs, receivers, and how impactful that can be. Yet with Jonathan Taylor, all of us, myself included, always kind of went back to what really is the difference between him and Nick Chubb. And I think that with Chubb, it was so obvious that there wasn't necessarily going to be much role growth. He'd been playing so many more years in the league than Taylor. And with Taylor, it was still kind of a black box. He was a new quarterback. We just didn't really know what that upside was. And I think that's really important for us to kind of be aware of just going forward, that with these elite talents, especially when there's changes in the offense, especially going from year 1 to year 2, that there was just this crazy upside case with Taylor, that either Hines gets injured or kind of what happened this year where the coaching staff decided, sort of like, I think we would all agree, ball in the hands, we'd rather have Taylor than Hines. And I think that the Colts they agreed and they realized, you know what? Yes, he's not as good of a pass catcher as Hines, but we can start to put him in that role knowing that, yes, there may be a couple more drops. The routes might not be as crisp, but with the ball in his hands, there is nobody in the NFL like Jonathan Taylor. And I think that's something that we can think about going forward is just, I mean, we talk about it every year, that like rookie to sophomore jump. Yet with Taylor, we didn't quite factor that in enough. So I got kind of lucky that I had a lot of Taylor because the ADP dropped so catastrophically. And he was going like mid to late second at times. But I think at the end of the day, I should have just always been confidently taking him in that mid to late first, knowing that this type of upside did exist. I mean, we saw what he could do last year. So I think that's something where I do not want to swing and miss and ever doubt these incredibly talented rookies in year 2 ever again.
It's a good lesson.
Yeah, for sure.
Some people learned that the hard way. Some people learned that the happy way, you know? Theo, I cut you off earlier, brother.
No, I think Jonathan Taylor was a great call, and I wonder how the market's going to correct itself. That'll be something to look at in the summer, whether we're looking at kind of the younger upside backs. Even though, he definitely proved it last summer, but like the 26, those kind of 26-year-old guys didn't necessarily produce as highly as they should have this year based on ADP, couple injuries and whatnot. 2 other guys that we saw have fantastic seasons. Should we have been more bullish drafting Cooper Kupp and Deebo Samuel? Obviously, Cooper Kupp was, a 4th-round pick in most leagues, but Deebo was falling into like the 8th round in a lot of these leagues, even in, August, September. Was this something we should have seen happening? And shout out to JD. Deebo is his most rostered player, so he did very well this year on that one.
So I'll start with the good and then go into the bad, at least personally, and just kind of what we can learn. So the good, I have a ton of Cooper Kupp. And the reason that I had a lot of Cooper Kupp was I did my own research. I listened to other people's arguments. I could not be convinced one way or the other that Woods or Kupp was going to have a better season. I knew one or both of them were going to crush it because a massive QB upgrade was coming in. And then especially like when Akers gets injured, it's like, come on. This team's going to have to pass. They can't just rely on the run game when Darrell Henderson's a pretty big unknown, but we kind of knew going into the season that he and McVay, they were not best friends and that this was going to be an offense with an incredible pass attack. So I had a ton of Cooper Kupp because I said, well, I don't know who's better between Woods and Kupp. Do any of us really know? yet there's this half round ADP gap. I just going to have a ton of Kupp, I guess, because I think they're basically the same guy. And then I didn't do that with Ayuk and Debo, even though if you asked me before the season, was I just so supremely confident Ayuk was the wide receiver one there, I would have said no. Yet I didn't end up with much of either. I had some rookie QB concerns with Lance and that they'd be really run heavy. And I was just so hung up on Debo's negative ADOT from last year, when really what I should have done was the same process that led me to take more Lockett than Metcalf, more Kupp than Woods, which is, unless I am just so supremely confident that I know exactly what the depth chart is, you have to take the cheapest guy. And there was such a big ADP gap that I just swung and missed there. And I should have been all over Debo. And with the thesis being, I don't know who the wide receiver one is there. Debo looked incredible as a rookie. Ayuk looked incredible as a rookie. And now there's this massive gap when we just don't actually know how it's going to play out. So I think that's kind of the lesson there, is that you just have to keep taking whoever's cheapest by ADP whenever there's any ambiguity in the situation. So I definitely wish I had more Debo. So that's kind of my takeaways. At the end of the day, like we shouldn't ever be too confident in our micro player analysis. And that it's the same reason why I just lament sometimes. I'm like, man, I wish I had a little more Mike Evans, because I knew the Buccaneers would have a good offense. I knew it. And I said, oh, but Mike Evans isn't the best value Buccaneer. And I just got so hung up on that, when that's nobody's forte, is those micro decisions, and that we're much better at predicting offenses. And I should have just been like, you know what? The 49ers will have a competent offense. They have the most cake schedule. They're going to be scoring some points. Let me just take by far the cheapest guy out of their big three with Kittle, Ayuk, and Debo, and take Debo. So swung and missed on him.
I think the quicker people can admit to themselves that, as we say often, they don't know shit, they'll get better at fantasy, because then you realize you're playing the percentages if something happened, as opposed to you deciding what's going to happen. And I think that's the problem. Everyone wants to pick a side, or pick a player that they like and avoid this guy and that guy. There are not a lot of guys you shouldn't have on your rosters if you're doing this right. There are certain types of players, and we can get into details, but I just mean like Debo's and things, especially guys that have shown it. For me, guys that have shown it before, that's an important trait for a player who, especially when not just like a one-off game or a one-off week that we sometimes see.
Yeah, for me, I mean, like I Kupp and Woods, I was kind of ambivalent on. I would generally take whoever was cheaper, so it ended up being Kupp more, which worked out well, but I just didn't get enough of Kupp. A lot of times I would end up going a different way, like Godwin or whatever, which was they were. I took other good players around there, Lockett, Godwin, McLaurin, but Kupp is obviously the one that worked out the best, and I just it would have been nice to have had more of him. Where I really fell down on Samuel was just that I was structurally, so many times I was looking for a different position where Samuel was in the draft. And I didn't put enough emphasis on the fact that, hey, I'm getting a discounted shot at somebody who might be the wide receiver one in San Francisco, right? And instead I kept going, no, I need a quarterback here. I need a tight end or whatever. And so I was just not, it seemed like I was never really looking for a wide receiver where Debo was available to me. And, I think that's a hole, it's definitely a leak, and one that I need to patch. So, that's one of the things I kind of wrote down in my notes moving forward. And we talked, one player we haven't really talked about is Leonard Fournette. I mean, you can sit there and say, well, how could you see that coming? Probably couldn't. But on the other hand, it kind of comes down to nobody really wanted to draft Fournette because everybody wants to be cool. And Fournette was not a cool player at that time of year. It was like everybody wants to have that sexy roster that looks good for Twitter. When I post my roster, everybody's going to ooh and ah over it. And if you have Fournette on there, everybody's going to be going, why'd you draft him? But here's a guy who absolutely had a chance to become a workhorse back in a fantastic offense. and he's available, the 9th, 10th, 11th round a lot of times. Sometimes Ronald Jones was going in front of him, and so you just, there's a certain point where you got to say, you know what, I'm okay having low enough standards to take Leonard Fournette, and I'm just gonna, take him and see what happens. So, that's one of those places where, while I didn't do well on Deebo Samuel, I got a ton of Fournette because I was just, I was willing to do that. Same thing on James Conner, another guy that I was just like, nobody ever seemed to want him. So I'm like, okay, I guess I'll take it.
Yeah, I think for me, it was the big takeaway I have with the Deebo one was if there's the same coaching staff, a lot of times if a player takes a step back in year 2 from year 1 after we've seen him produce, the fantasy community kind of gets a little more negative on him. And I think it's Chase Claypool next year. I don't think that the market will correct itself in the same way it did with Deebo Samuel, but Claypool is one guy that I'm looking at for next year to have a big step forward. We saw him flash as a rookie. Everybody who spent higher draft capital on him this year, will be a little sour on him. He'll probably get drafted maybe about the same range or lower next year, and I think he's going to end up being a great value. So I think it's really when a guy pops as a rookie, we should use that as a big takeaway. Year 2, things happen. So heading into year 3, I think that, there's a chance for those guys to have big rebounds as we saw with Deebo.
Okay, let's go back to Johnny Guerrero because he had a question. FFPC, he's got a JT team. I've got one of those, brother, and that team has Cook and Madison. So that's what I was asking my question for earlier. Not that the rest of the team is good, so the flex was picked, but he's deciding between Madison and Amir Abdullah. I mean, guys, who would have thought some of these names that are coming up this year? It's like, what's actually your buddy, the Podfather, was talking about like Back to the Future. This year it's like you got the Treadwells out there. So Larky, Madison or Abdullah, what do you think?
So I think if you're just a heavy, you have to be a really heavy underdog. I think if you start Madison and you just cross your fingers that Dalvin Cook has some kind of shoulder flare up early in the game, because I think if either of these guys can hit 20 fantasy points, it's Madison. However, unless you are such a heavy underdog, I'd go Abdullah just because Chuba Hubbard, they definitely tried him out. He was auditioning for that bell cow role earlier in the season. Didn't really seem like they liked him in that role. I think it's kind of why they brought in Abdullah, why they had, I can't even remember the other guy's name. I want to say was it Rodney Smith? Was the pass catching back one or two of those weeks?
Royce Freeman there for a while.
Yeah, Royce Freeman.
Royce Freeman there, yeah.
Yep.
They've really just kind of cycled through this receiving back where it's clear Chuba is not quite the guy. And I think Abdullah is going to have a pretty nice workload. It feels like he's one of those kind of safe floor 5 to 7 targets kind of guy where it's Atlanta. They're probably going to score a decent amount of points. Atlanta's just been terrible against running backs. So I think Abdullah's not necessarily the most fun guy, but I do think it's going to be a Dalvin Cook workhorse week, most likely. So just grab 8 to 12 Abdullah points. It's that kind of week.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm going Abdullah in that start sit.
Yeah, same, and for the same reasons as Josh. I mean, you have to take into context of what it is that you need, and if you feel like you need to get some points, then Abdullah's the way to go. If you got to hit the home run, then maybe Madison.
I got a dirty one for you. Alex Collins or Chuba Hubbard?
Oh, Hubbard.
Yeah, Chuba.
Okay.
Collins is dust.
Yes, and it's like even Penny's popping now in Seattle, right? It's like they got 17 guys back there right now.
Yeah, I mean, Collins had a little bit of a run. He was okay for a little while. He was usable, but it became clear over the past several weeks that he doesn't have it anymore.
It's kind of like the guys who should be backup quarterbacks. After a while, they start showing who they really are. It's kind of like that, right?
Yep.
Theo, you want to bring us into rest of season type of analysis here with Josh?
Yeah. So just one big question with the playoffs moving forward next week for most people. Who are the players you see as league winners right now? The guys that are going to rip off and really help teams win the titles in their fantasy leagues. Is there anybody standing out to you, Josh?
Yeah, I've been pounding the table for this guy the last couple weeks. Some injuries are now going to help him even more. It's Josh Jacobs. And I think he's one of those guys where it sounds crazy. And I don't have much Josh Jacobs on my teams. He seemed like the quintessential low upside pick to me. But if we zoom out right now, year 1 Jacobs, 2 targets a game. Year 2 Jacobs, 3 targets a game. And then this year in year 3, he's over 4 targets a game. And this was even before the Drake injury. If you factor out that 9 target game from this past week, he was still a 4 target a game running back this year. He was running all the routes the last few weeks before this Drake injury. It's an offense that's just so devoid of talent right now. We don't know what's going on with Waller. They lose Ruggs. Bryan Edwards isn't getting it done. It's really just Hunter Renfrow at this point. And then Josh Jacobs, who I think is very likely going to have more games like we just saw, where he's heavily targeted. He's the goal line back. It's a competent enough offense that the touchdowns are there. So I think he's kind of a weird player in that sense, because we generally don't associate these slower, kind of grinded out running backs as league winners. But I can totally see Josh Jacobs giving you 20 fantasy points a game the next few weeks. And you look up and you go, wow, this guy was getting 15 carries a game and 5 to 6 targets a game. And I'm winning the title because I took Josh Jacobs in the 5th.
I think it's a great one. And shout out to Dwayne McFarland. He had a similar take that Jacobs is crushing, and he had a great take that was when Ruggs had his thing and disappeared. They just became a lot lower ADOT, and Renfrow and Jacobs now are getting these short, highly efficient passes. And one thing,
especially with Waller not in the picture, right? Especially with Waller not there.
Yeah, it's just it's like efficient short passes, and you're seeing Jacobs get a lot of targets. I think that's a great take that on Jacobs as a potential league winner.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I will point out Josh took my player, so good job, Josh. That's it makes me feel good that you're on the same page as me. But to kind of switch gears a little bit, one of the ones I really like right now is Jalen Waddle. I mean, he's just really coming into his own. He's scoring in a variety of ways. I mean, he's getting some touchdowns. He's he's a PPR machine. He can break for some yak. So he's scoring fantasy points in all the ways you want to see, and so it just kind of opens up the opportunity for him on every given week to be able to do that. So you've got to get through this week, but then you got him for the stretch run after that, and so he's a player that I'm really happy to have on several teams that are doing well.
For me, it was Kyler Murray. I think that if you were able to survive the weeks that he was injured, and you're getting into the playoffs in your league, I think you've got a great chance of winning. DeAndre Hopkins comes back. Now Chase Edmonds is coming back. Familiarity with Zach Ertz. I think that, and James Conner playing like a bell cow. That offense is going to be humming. We saw Murray last week, how efficient he was coming back from injuries. It's a touchdown machine. And I think if you look at their matchups, there's a couple of really juicy ones coming up. The Rams game has potential to be a shootout. Then he's got Detroit. In Detroit, they might hang 40+ on him. I think that especially when you're in these like FFPC main events and Football Guys tournaments where there might be less Kyler Murray teams, if you're able to get in one of these major tournaments with Kyler Murray, I think you have to be feeling pretty good.
Mine's a little more under the radar real quick. I know we're going to touch on this later, so hopefully I'm not stealing anything Josh was going to drop. But this is a guy I actually bought today, and he's helped me through these Waller, Kittle type injuries. And that's Conklin, the tight end, playing tonight in Minnesota. I see, Josh. I hope I didn't just pull the rug off his under him. But I picked him up for a second. I asked Dan what's his value, because I was trying to get him for 2/3. But I just feel like with how messy that position is, and like I said, we'll get into it a little deeper. He's a nice little ad, especially we talk about FFPC and tight end premium leagues, which most of them are these days. I think. To have the floor this guy's giving you is double digits most weeks. We talk about narrower target trees, Dan. That's definitely one of them out there in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Sorry, Josh.
And as long as we're talking about Minnesota, let's not overlook the obvious, which is Justin Jefferson.
What a beast.
I mean, while Thielen is out, I think he's just going to absolutely smash.
Mm-hmm.
I was smiling that whole time because I wrote down, so I even saw Wheeler in the chat put Elijah Moore. The names that I wrote down, it was Elijah Moore. I had Conklin. I moved the second that the games ended last week, I put Kyler back in my QB1 rest of season chair. I had Waddle written down. Like, it was crazy. As every name that was being dropped, I was like, wow, I wrote down like 8 names and we are just rifling off. So
I mean, we're running pure tonight, Josh. We're running pure. And that's a great segue. Conklin was. We're going to ask you about tight ends. Tight end's tricky right now. A lot of leagues, you're listening in. You might be in a Yahoo league that you might have 15 guys rostered. There might be a lot of tight ends on the waiver wire. You seem to be high on Conklin. Is there any other tight ends that might be a little bit below the radar that you could see being very usable over the next few weeks?
So the other name I wrote down, because Conklin was my big one, where I was really, really high on him before the season started. I have a ton of Conklin. Nice. Even before the Irv Smith injury, I thought he's good enough to force his way into these 2 tight end sets and force them to play a lot of 12 personnel. I mean, now we see that, yes, he is pretty good because Irv Smith goes out and they basically just gave Conklin everything. The other guy that I wrote down was Cole Kmet. I mean, it's such a bad offense. It's slow paced, but the last month and a half, he's averaged nearly 7 targets a game. And the Bears are kind of in this position where I think they're really just going to start to lean on their younger guys, figure out what they have. It's looking like a lost season. So, I mean, they are just fully incentivized at this point to have Mooney and Kmet really showing off. So it's just hard to find that type of volume on your waiver wire. And I think Kmet could very well be there on the waiver wire in a lot of leagues just because he's on the Bears and the fantasy points haven't been great. But I always like to chase the targets. And I think Kmet kind of has a nice floor and does have some type of ceiling. We've seen a couple pretty nice yardage games out of him, which shows that he is a legitimate receiving threat. So I don't have any super sneaky names, but Kmet was the other guy that I had written down.
So I just want to quickly, selfishly, Mooney, do you have, again, you look at these offenses and going into this final stretch, a guy like Mooney, do you think that's a good buy? You talk about him with Kmet. Do you still see him as a good buy right now for the rest of this season? I know he's young and he's got that, beyond the season dynasty value, but do you see any issues with Chicago beyond Kmet, I guess, if you're buying right now with regards to Mooney?
I would be buying Mooney. I think there's still sort of he's on the Bears and Allen Robinson, he'll probably come back. Allen Robinson feels like a great candidate to pretty much just be shut down. Mm-hmm. Either the team shuts him down or he himself goes, you know what? I'm not going to be here next year. And every single game that I play is lowering the contract that I'm going to get come the off season. So I think it's just kind of if there was ever a prime shutdown candidate, it's just like Galladay last year where I think Galladay probably could have played, but I mean, why risk it? It's the Lions. And I think it's kind of that same attitude. It's the Bears. They're not going anywhere. What do you really have to gain by playing? So I kind of like the consolidation that should just be Montgomery, Mooney, Kmet going forward.
A-Rob is like that show, The Biggest Loser, out of all the talented wide receivers in football. Man, that guy just takes a beating when it comes to quarterbacks. He just cannot get it.
Yeah. And that is a good point that A-Rob kind of provides a little bit of a smoke screen for Mooney right now. So because, supposedly he's coming back this week and he's going to start, so if you can use that to help, just get you a little bit lower of a price on Mooney, I think that's a great way to go. One more tight end. And this is for only people with very strong stomachs. Like, if you were involved in the great cicada hatch out on the East Coast or whatever, and you were one of those people who decided, you know what, I'm going to try one of those deep fried cicadas or something like that. This is the tight end for you. Okay. James O'Shaughnessy. You've got to have a strong stomach to be able to throw him in your starting lineup. But you know what? If you're scraping the bottom of the barrel, you can do a lot worse. I mean, Urban Meyer has just, for whatever reason, he's been calling the number of like every bad player that he has. You know, we're talking Jamal Agnew. We're talking, Dan Arnold, James O'Shaughnessy. I mean, it's like the worse the player is, the more Urban wants to seem to get the ball in his hands. So, James O'Shaughnessy season, I'm here for it.
He's the reason I bought Conklin, Dan, for a second, because I had Shaughnessy and he gave me 4 points last week. I still won the match, but he only gave me 4 points. I was like, hey, I got to make this move for Conklin. I'm going
to go out on a limb. I'm going to say O'Shaughnessy's going to get you 10 points this week.
I like it. Yeah. The week before he got you 10 points, so that's not that crazy of a take, and I like it, especially these tight ends. If you get 10 out of a tight end right now, you're pretty happy.
Exactly. Andrew Schellenberg and I are starting a O'Shag Hennessy, on a Dallas Goddard team. So it's O'Shag Hennessy season in the GOAT District. Everyone, go for it. And Dan is the tight end whisperer, so definitely write that one down in ink.
Yeah, I like it. I put we have a player profiler newsletter that comes out on Friday, that goes out Fridays to our email list, and I provide some streamers at a few different positions, and I have 2 really gross tight ends for my main streamers this week, which is O'Shaughnessy and then Evan Ingram, where it's 2 guys that have decent matchups, should be just getting peppered with targets, and that if you're in a PPR league, you really need a tight end, these guys have some type of floor and enough of a ceiling with that, with how many targets they should be getting, where if they get in the end zone next, they get 15 fantasy points, just shows up on a platter. So I think O'Shaughnessy, O'Shag Hennessy, whatever we're calling him, James O. I think it's pretty gross, but yeah, like for some reason, these Jaguars tight ends, it's kind of like the Washington tight ends, where for some reason it's just sort of a plug and play position, and that the actual athlete is clearly coming second to this is our offense, and we need the tight end heavily involved.
Well, we talked about a couple of really untalented players. Let's talk about a really talented one. We just saw the Javonte Williams massive game. It was a legendary performance. Won a lot of people, a lot of leagues. A lot of playoff games in the FFPC. Is he the next great 2-way running back in 2022? And what are your expectations for him moving forward? How high on Javonte are you, Josh?
So he's someone where I'm still just not 100% sure what his situation next year is going to look like. However, I think at least in Dynasty, I think us player profiler folk are definitely, we're above the field in terms of how the casual person is viewing Javonte. And I think it's just because he's one of those guys where he's talented enough that he's going to have a very clear role, at least like better than what he's been this year in terms of kind of the Gordon split, where we know that this guy is going to be getting a pretty heavy workload the next 3, 4, 5, 6 seasons because of how talented he is. And that it's just, when you see what he's doing per play and how he makes guys miss, and that this guy just has a knack for creating yards, those are the types of players that I really like investing in Dynasty. And then for next season, I think even if they re-sign Melvin Gordon, because I know that there's been talks like, why not just re-sign Gordon? He's helped keep Javonte healthy. He's been decent with the Broncos. I think no matter what happens, like with Jonathan Taylor, these players that we know are hyper talented in year 2, almost every single time they have at least as good, if not a better role than we're projecting for them. So I think with Javonte, I'm probably going to be taking him in the first round of some drafts next year. Kind of regardless of who the running back is that's also in that room. Unless they do something crazy like draft a round 1 running back, which, I mean, they're not going to do. I think pretty much every other case, I think Javonte is going to be the type of player that I want to be invested in, because we're not playing for second, third, fourth place. We're playing for first place. And I think Javonte just has so many different ways that what we saw this past week can kind of become his norm next year and beyond.
And unless Pete Carroll ends up in Denver, they're not going to take a running back first round.
No, Pete Carroll will take a running back in the 5th or 6th or 7th round and then start him over Javonte. But yeah, Josh makes a great point here. Bet on talent. And that's one of the things, when we were talking about when we did our 2-round Dynasty mock a couple nights ago. And I mentioned that I like using those dynasty results, like who is really hot in dynasty. And, I don't mind carrying that over to season long because, again, those people who are at the very top of the dynasty rankings are going to be the most talented players. And those are the players you want to have on your team. Even if you're not sure exactly how they're going to get there, you just learn over the years to trust that they are going to get there somehow. And, one of the things Dwayne McFarland says all the time, is that, a lot of times we kind of oversell the ability of a rookie running back to be able to shove a veteran out of the way, even if he's maybe the more talented player. But in year two, that really reverses. And in year two, often we see that rookie, that player who was super talented as a rookie come in as a second-year player, and now they know what the league's about. Now they know how they need to train for the offseason. Now they know, they've got a much better handle on the playbook and everything else, and they have no problem shoving that, established veteran out of the way. So, I think that's a great point that Josh brought up.
Just ask AJ Dillon.
Yeah, there you go.
I think it's
well on his way.
I think that's a great point, and it's also I think Dan also had a fantastic point about when you carry over the dynasty perspective into the redraft, you're going to be drafting guys with higher upside and their best seasons ahead of them. I think a lot of fantasy players in redraft love to have seen it before, but I think if you're willing to take that calculated risk that this is the next RB1 or this is the next wide receiver one, a lot of times that's going to pay off for you a lot more in redraft than just chasing, big seasons past. We did our dynasty mock draft, which was just awesome with Andrew Schellenberg 2 nights ago.
Yeah, check it out,
everybody
guys.
Listen to it. Josh, we want to know your top 5 players for dynasty startups this summer. Who are you going in and drafting?
So I think that I kind of have 2 that I'm locked and loaded on. And then I like my next 3 names, but I think there can be some shuffling just depending on personal preference. So number 1, you said it was a 1 QB league, right?
Yep.
Just non-superflex.
So Jonathan Taylor, I think he has to be number 1. I don't think there's a case for anyone else. This is just, he looks like the kind of guy that can very well be, if he's healthy, a league-winning player this year, next year, the year after, and that we could have 4 seasons of just ridiculous production out of him. And then I think number 2 is also kind of non-negotiable for me, and that's Justin Jefferson, where it's just really hard for me to see anyone else right now as the dynasty wide receiver 1. I do a big Twitter thread each week, kind of recapping the week and some season-long trends, some recent past week trends. And I mean, Justin Jefferson's improving pretty much across the board from last year, like yards per route run, fantasy points, like pretty much any targets per game, target share, like every single metric that you really want to look at. When people would go, oh, he's just so efficient as a rookie, this won't happen again. Well, it didn't happen again. He's actually better than he was as a rookie when he was just kind of stumping us with how efficient he was. So Jefferson, number 2. And then after that, I think there's just kind of 3 names that I like that you can kind of rotate how you want. I wrote them as Chase at number 3, Swift 4, Javonte 5. And the case for these
close,
3.
Josh, you were so close.
I didn't want him to get my top 5 because I'm dropping my top.
You
4
got
after the
4. You got 4 of my 5 top 5. So good job. Good job.
So these are just bets on talent where we know Chase is so incredibly talented. He's going to be a difference maker for years and years. The same thing with Swift. I think for some reason his injury concerns seem overblown. He's not a small running back.
Aren't they usually?
Yeah, he's not one of these guys that's necessarily going to just be crushed with touch volume, because I don't love the high touch running backs in general. I think JT's kind of an exception because of how freak athlete he is and his frame. But with Swift, he's actually not a small back. He's bigger than a lot of starting running backs out there. I love how efficient he is with the fantasy points per touch. He's so talented that I just don't see him losing touches to any running backs the next 2, 3, 4, 5 seasons. Same thing with Javonte, just so talented. How do you see him losing work the next 4 or 5 years? So that's kind of my top 5 as players where outside of injury, it's really hard to see any type of role decrease going forward the next 3, 4, 5 years.
Guys, go check out our show Tuesday. We did a 2-round, 1 QB tight end premium mock draft. Was a ton of fun, and it just made the dynasty wheels spin and start really thinking about going into next year and this offseason, what these drafts are going to look like and how you want to build your rankings, your tiers as we, let's face it, guys, we're in the back end of this season as much as it's flown by. Let's do a couple questions, guys, from the chat, because we have a few that we've kind of thrown on, and then Dan. Oh, there you go, Dan. Dan's on it. My man, producer Dan.
Alexander wants to know Henderson, Gordon, or Madison. So let's start with that one. Theo, what you got?
Henderson.
He's playing for sure?
I don't know if it's for sure.
I think he should be playing this week. I think it sounds like he's gonna be going. And that's a huge game. It's Arizona. I personally think that Gordon will be in a complimentary role. I think that it's pretty hard to put Javonte back in the box after that. And we've all given our takes on Madison. So I'm Henderson.
If he doesn't play, who are you putting?
Gordon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Josh?
Yeah, I was going to say that I think Henderson probably, but more so at least actionable for tonight is I would just assume that one or both of Gordon and Henderson are going to be healthy and playing, and that should give you the confidence to keep Madison out tonight at the very least.
I like that.
And then we get the Friday practice reports, and we just get more information.
Perfect. That's exactly what I was going to say. So, yes, absolutely. All right, another league, Cooks or Madison? I think we're all on Cooks here, right, guys?
Yeah, Cooks.
Is he okay? He's asking Dalvin or Madison in there. I was curious if he was asking if this was Brandon Cooks. I don't know.
Oh, that's how I was interpreting.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Okay, so
I would assume it's Dalvin, but I could be wrong. Yeah, if it's Brandon Cooks,
well,
I would go Brandon Cooks.
Cook or Cooks over Madison. Both Cooks.
Yes. I might even go Jared Cook over Madison.
Oh, no.
There you go.
No, not a big Jared Cook guy. All right, our buddy Kyle up here in curling land. He's got a couple start sits. Cousins, or couple Cousins decisions. So Cousins and Rogers, or Cousins or Heineke?
I'm going
Rogers. Yeah,
no doubt.
Yeah, no brainer.
Yeah, I think Rogers just because Cousins won't have Thielen, and it's not that I expect him to be bad tonight, but I mean, we've seen in the past where you lose a pretty key receiver and the offense changes. I mean, we saw with Derek Carr. Derek Carr was like, I think he was leading the NFL in passing yards quite possibly. Ruggs is gone, and next thing you know, he becomes a pumpkin. So that's always the concern, is that you lose Thielen, Jefferson's doubled, and then, I mean, we like Conklin, but you're not running an offense through Conklin in the pass game. So I think there are legit concerns with Thielen out.
I might go Heineke in the other start sit. I think that Dallas Washington game, Dallas Washington game to me could be a sneaky over. I think those teams are going for it. You've got McCarthy saying that they're going to win the game. I think that's Gibson's running well. And you have a little bit of a rushing upside with Heineke as well. So I might go Heineke there. Cousins, you got to kind of like certain things about his home matchup, but for me, it's always very hard relying on Cousins. I might go Heineke, but they're very, very close. That's a tough one.
I'm going Cousins just because it's at home. But, I do think it's super close between Cousins and Heineke. The odds are you can probably just flip a coin.
Just flip a Heineke.
Yeah, I think I'd lean Cousins a tiny bit. What I like about Cousins as well, compared to Heineke, where I view them fairly similarly, is that Cousins plays tonight. And I do really like having my guy play as early as possible, because then I can kind of know how to structure the rest of my lineup decisions. And that if I have a few others I'm considering, if Cousins has a huge game, I mean, obviously that makes it really easy. And if Cousins doesn't have a good game, then at least you know to lean volatility the rest of the week, and that I generally put quite a bit of stock into let's see if I have key Thursday night players, how they did, and then go off that. But I don't think Heineke's like the wrong move. I would just probably lean Cousins myself.
Josh, man, you're becoming legend just with the goodness that you bring, not only to the district, but to fantasy land. We appreciate your 60 tonight. Hopefully we can get you back for a fourth. Again, just remind the people, guys, at Larky tweets. Anything else you want to share before we close this out, brother?
I'm going to share my answer to the final question. I'll do this in 30 seconds. A surprise top 24 dynasty asset that I have. This receiver just turned 25 years old. He's the wide receiver 6 per game right now. Over a 30% target share, number 4 in the NFL in that. And he has a 38.6% team air yard share, which is number 9. Yet everyone thinks this is just purely a close to the line of scrimmage guy, not realizing maybe he's a product of bad quarterback play and he's just insanely talented. This is Deante Johnson, number 9 in team air yard share in the NFL. I'm just been going to bat for my guy. So
I have him at number 10 in my dynasty rankings.
There we go. Yeah, I looked at Fantasy Pros, a couple other places. This is not a top 24 dynasty asset, and I was shocked. So Deante Johnson.
Wheeler's telling you to promote your TikTok, Josh.
So Twitter, Larky tweets. TikTok is Larky TikToks. I'm desperate on TikTok. I've got 200 followers. I'm not a teenage girl, so it is really hard to grow on that platform.
Well, you have 200 more than me, so
I was gonna say the other 3 guys on the screen probably won't because I don't even have TikTok. So
I might open up a TikTok just to follow Josh.
Let's do it. There we go. We're gonna do it.
Exactly.
Guys, open a TikTok just to follow Josh. Theo. Dan, I'll go to you first. Closing words.
Man, this is a huge week in a lot of leagues. I mean, some of the leagues you're playing your final regular season game. Some of your leagues are already in the playoffs. And there's a whole lot of uncertainty out there about a lot of players. So I think if you've got choices to make tonight and you're not sure what you got coming up, you might want to take it as long as it's a decent choice tonight. Just go ahead and stick in the player that you know for sure is going to play. But beyond that, otherwise you just got to be able to and willing to use your waiver wire to adjust if possible. But get out there, win those leagues, get yourself in the playoffs if that's what you're working on doing. Advance yourself in the playoffs if that's what you're doing. And anytime if you have any questions, you feel free to check with any one of us. We'll always help you out with that. So you can DM us. You can just ask, tweet us a question, whatever. We'll more than happily help you out.
Guess I just want to give a shout out to all of our NFFC listeners. This is the money week. This is the week to cash in those regular season prizes. And shout out to all of our FFPC listeners. Hopefully you're in a number of title games right now and main events and football guys. This is the final week, so we're done with Wednesday waivers. We're all excited about that, and this is the time to bring it home and make correct lineup decisions. And listen to Dan; he stressed this for the last couple of shows, and it's don't go down swinging in these leagues. Understand the matchup you're in. If you need a higher upside play, be realistic about it. You don't want to put a guy in that's going to give you 8 to 10 points out of some perception of safety. And then lose your matchup. Go down swinging, take a chance on some of these higher upside, touchdown, deep threat wide receivers, and make calculated risks. It's about winning these matchups, not about having close matchups.
And I'll piggyback on that. Just looking dynasty, guys, it's about winning. So if you have a chance right now, and you're not FFPC, we love our FFPC followers. That's where we play the majority of our football. But you can still trade if you're on MFL or some of these other platforms. Make the moves, guys. Make the moves. Don't be scared to give up a bit of future. Or even if you got to go at a guy like Gronk, we talked about tonight, get a Gronk Brady stack to take you down the stretch. If you're honest with yourself and your team is a legit contender, don't be afraid to make the move because, guys, the money's not always on the table. If you're in the playoffs and you're in the hunt right now is the time to do it. Don't be thinking 4 or 5 years down the road. That's the biggest mistake you'll make, especially when you're talking dynasty. Guys, we talked about the top 25, the top 24, the 2-round mock that we did. Go check out Theo, Dan. I'll be dropping mine later tonight, our top 24 players. do the exercise yourselves, guys, and tag us on it. Show us what you have. It's an important exercise. It'll help you make these trades, especially if you're in reno mode, what you guys call rebuild. This information is invaluable in knowing your trade targets. So, guys, we appreciate you hanging out with us tonight. Josh, we appreciate you. Guys, smoke it this week. Go get those W's. Go get those wins. Get that money. Enjoy it, guys. Enjoy the football. Enjoy the thrill, the nerves. Enjoy all of it. Go kill it, guys. We appreciate you. Cheers. And cheers to the chat. You guys are awesome.